Hi, I'm Sandy Peterson, and we're going to talk about the Crawling Chaos. So first I'd like to mention that here is the final version of the map. So it's like all cool and you can see it. I don't think it's been displayed before. But if you look over here, we have the starting area for Crawling Chaos, the Plateau of Lang, or otherwise known as South Asia. So you get your gate there, covering up that beautiful blue symbol, and your 6 cultists, and that's how you start. Okay, your faction ability is that your units can fly. That means that when you move, instead of moving one area to an adjacent area, you can move 2 areas. So on this map, what this means is that from your starting area, you can reach every single location on the map with one move. So your cultists can fly from Lang to the North Atlantic, to North America West. Actually, they might not be able to North America East, but they can get almost everywhere with the areas. The point is they can get all over the place. So, and they can fly over areas. There's an enemy guy here. You can fly right over him and land in West Africa, and that's all cool. So that's a very flexible and useful ability. It really helps in the early game when you're setting up your starting gates, and and it also helps you get to people that are weak. If you see a vulnerable area like an abandoned gate, you can zero right in on it in a way that other factions only dream of doing. Okay, so your units. You have let's see, 10, 13, 14, 17 units, and here's what they are. Your 6 cultists, as always. Then you have 3 night gaunts. Night gaunts roll 0 combat, cost 1. Then you have 3 flying polyps. These have 1 combat and cost 2. The mighty hunting horrors, which roll 2 combat dice and cost 3. And lastly, there is Nyarlathotep himself, who costs 10 and is one of the simplest Great Old Ones to summon. All you have to do is have a controlled gate, you pay your 10, you pop him on the map. He's costly, he's expensive, but you don't have to jump through any kind of hoops, take off units, or move gates or anything. You just pay your 10, you got him. Okay, now Nyarlathotep's combat total is calculated by how many spellbooks you have plus how many spellbooks your enemy has. So over the course of the game, it gradually goes higher. The lowest his combat can ever be is 1 in the theoretical possibility that your only spellbook was the one you got for summoning Nyarlathotep. I've never seen that happen. Usually you have more than 1. And then the enemy, the more spellbooks he has, the more you have. So your maximum possibility is 12. If you have all 6 and he has all 6, and that generally happens every single game near the end of the game. So he rolls a pretty hefty amount of combat, and in fact, he is your major source of combat dice for your big attacks. So he's very key to your faction, not only because he gives you the combat oomph you need, and all his other monsters, the hunting horrors, the flying pox, are sort of like supporting players. Supporting units to him. He's like the star. And your spellbooks are designed so as to really take advantage of that too. Okay, so your spellbooks. Again, Nyarlathotep is a simple faction to play. He's straightforward. He's like, you have to pay through the nose for everything, but that's how it is being Nyarlathotep. So he has Nyarlathotep has special ability also, which makes him even better. Let's mention this. It's called Harbinger. And what happens if Nyarlathotep's in a battle where there's an enemy Great Old One, and that Great Old One is pained or killed, which is pretty likely since Nyarlathotep may be rolling 10 or 12 dice, then Nyarlathotep gets, even if Nyarlathotep himself is killed or pained, your faction gets half the power it costs to summon that Great Old One. So for example, if you have pained or killed Ithaca, who costs 6, you can get 3 power. Alternatively, instead of the power, you can get 2 Elder Signs. It's always 2, no matter how much power the guy's worth. So for example, if you're fighting the King in Yellow who costs 4, you have a choice of either getting 2 power from injuring him, or 2 Elder Signs. And I think 90% of the time you pick the 2 Elder Signs, because, Elder Signs are cool. So Nyarlathotep likes to go prey on your Great Old Ones and steal their power and steal their Elder Signs. And when he's fighting cheap Great Old Ones, he generally wants to get the Elder Signs. Expensive Great Old Ones like Hastur, he may want to get the power, but, it's always a toss-up. So, back to our units. Ordering the spellbooks. So, first spellbook, as your action for a round, pay 4 power. This doesn't mean that you move 4 units or you summon something that costs 4. It means all you do is lower your power marker 4, you pay 4 power, then you get that spellbook. The next one is, as your action for the round, pay 6 power. Same as you just sit there as your only action, you say I'm paying 6 power. It's you get the thing. Now you do have the option, you can get both these spellbooks in a single round by paying 10 power. I've seen that done, I think, twice because the guy had an emergency to get the spellbooks right away. But usually you kind of pay it on the installment plan. One turn you pay 4, later on you play 6, whenever you can afford it. So that's how those are. You just pay money, you get your spellbooks. Okay, next. He gets a spellbook if he controls 3 gates on the map. Okay? Now, he has an alternative to this because it's either he has 3 gates or he has 12 power in a turn. So if you have trouble getting gates because of the perfidy of your opponents, all you gotta do is score 12 power. You may be asking yourself, how can I get 12 power if I don't have 3 gates? And the answer is, well, there's ways in Untitled Chapter can do that, which we'll get into in a minute. Second spellbook is control 4 gates. If you control 4 gates, this may not last very long because usually people get pretty hip to not letting you have 4 gates, but you only have to have it for a second to get the spellbook. And of course your ability to fly around the map and hit almost everywhere, it makes it a lot easier to get those, steal those gates. And again, this has the alternate option of, instead of controlling 4 gates, you could simply have 15 power. Either of those would work. Okay, his 5th spellbook is Capture an Enemy Cultist. This one is something that's good to try to get early in the game. If you can't get it early with your predatory ways, then you have to go late in the game and use Untitled to get them. This one is probably the one that's the biggest pain for Untitled to get. So you have to be thinking about it from the start, how I can steal an enemy cultist. Okay, finally there is the Awakening Your Untitled. Every faction has a spellbook for Awakening a Great Old One. You do too. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, now we're going to talk about these spellbooks that we get. So one of the really cool spellbooks you get, I like to get it early. Beginning players often don't get it until late and so don't get the full advantage, but it's called Madness. What Madness does is, whenever anyone in the game is forced to retreat because of pains, instead of them picking where they go, you, the Crawling Chaos, pick where they go. This includes your own units. So even in battles you're not in. So Cthulhu's fighting Yellow Sign somewhere in the corner of the map. Now they have to retreat. You pick where they retreat. So you can arrange units so one of them has to be killed and can't retreat, or you can retreat them into the most awkward possible places. So the effect on this over the course of the game is, the earlier you get it, then the more the enemy players tend to have their units not optimally placed because they've been retreated into Australia or some godforsaken place, whereas your units always retreat into the best possible spot for the next round. So it's like a constant little suppression that they're paying to you all through the game. Whenever there's a fight, a lot of that moves in there and treats the guys. And there's no way of stopping or canceling or getting rid of this. Once you have it, it's just there. It's just the way the game works. So it's pretty cool. Next, one of the earliest spellbooks is Abduct. This is the Night Gaunt spellbook. And the way it works is that if a battle is declared in an area with a Night Gaunt, so for example, let's say that these monsters here say, we want to kill your Night Gaunt. We're declaring combat on them. Well, what you do is you invoke Abduct, and before the battle starts, you remove the Night Gaunt. He just simply goes away. He flies off. But he doesn't go alone. He carries one of the enemy units with him. Now the enemy picks who's carried off. Okay, so they would say, well, here I have some Ghasts and a Gug. I know they're normally enemies, but they're friends here for this game. So the enemy would say, well, I'm losing my Ghast, and the Ghast is picked off the map and he dies too. So it's sort of a mutual suicide pact. You lose the Night Gaunt, but they lose their guy. Now one of the tricks of the Night Gaunt is that you can place it in areas where the enemy has like an expensive unit they don't want to lose, and then they really don't want to fight you, because if they only have one expensive unit, that's sucky for them to have it killed by a crappy 1-point Night Gaunt. Night Gaunt also is a flexible unit because he is able to zip around the map, and he's very cheap. He's like your early gate defender. He's particularly obnoxious to players such as Opener of the Way and Cthulhu, because they tend to have fewer but expensive monsters. Okay, next, the Flying Polyp. The Flying Polyp, sorry, not him, but his spellbook, Invisibility. The Flying Polyp has the ability to shift units sort of out of this plane of existence. So what happens is, before the battle, the Flying Polyp chooses one unit in the battle to not participate in the battle. They're turned invisible. They're out of the battle. So he can choose his own unit. So for example, if you have a Flying Polyp alone in an area, he can say, I choose me to be out of the battle. Then there's no battle because you're not in the battle. And I'm going to show an example here in a second. Or you can choose an enemy unit. Now with the Fly Impala, unlike most abilities, you get to pick who is turned invisible. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that I have 2 Flying Polyps and a Night Gaunt here being attacked by these 2 nasty ghasts and a hideous Gug. Okay, what I could do is I say, okay, the Flying Polyps are turning the ghasts invisible. They're not in the fight anymore. So they're just not in the fight. Then I'm using Abduct to remove my Night Gaunt. Well, the only guy he has left to be carried off by the Night Gaunt is the Mighty Gug. So by use of invisibility and Abduct, you've killed a Gug without even rolling dice. Then of course the fight's over because, I mean, the Flying Polyps are still there, but there's no one to fight because the ghasts aren't in the fight because you turn them invisible. So that's an example of how that can work. I've seen that happen, that exact situation happen in the game, and it's pretty cool. Okay, Hunting Horrors. They have a spellbook too. It is called Seek and Destroy. The way it works is that when a battle is about to begin, just before, again, all their combat abilities here are pre-battle. You take a Hunting Horror from anywhere on the map, and you can teleport into the battle area. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have Nyarlathotep that wants to go fight somewhere, and so you move here to fight him, and of course the obvious risk for Nyarlathotep is that when he moves there, like he's all alone, so if they roll a single kill, they'll kill Nyarlathotep. That sucks. So you move there, you declare battle, and when the battle begins, your 2 Hunting Horrors you have previously built somewhere are summoned there for free, and look, you effectively got 3 guys in the battle for the cost of moving 1, because you only had to move him, and they just appear. So Hunting Horrors, essentially in this case, yeah, they add 2 dice, but their main function here is to add extra death, so it's harder to get Nyarlathotep. And they can also use it, say you have something puny, like you have a Mirror Cultist here, they declare battle at. Well, the Hunting Horrors fly in, now you got some combat oomph. A lot of Nyarlathotep's combat abilities sort of work like this. They're good defensively. You know, Night Gaunt makes it hard to attack a single unit. The Flying Polyps makes you attacking with 1 unit is completely worthless. He just turns you invisible, and so forth. Okay, Nyarlathotep, he has 2 spellbooks that affect him. One of them is Emissary of the Outer Gods. This spellbook makes it so that unless he's fighting an enemy Great Old One, any kill result on Nyarlathotep becomes a pain. He can't die when he's fighting non-Great Old Ones. So in this fight against the Gugs and the Ghasts that I showed earlier, Nyarlathotep couldn't be killed anyway if he had that spellbook because, hey, they're not Great Old Ones. Okay? So he may choose not to bother to fly in his Hunting Horrors with Seek and Destroy, because why bother? Because they can get killed and he can't, so he's immune. The final spellbook I'm going to talk about is everyone's favorite. It's called the 1,000 Forms. And the way it works is like this. It's an action that costs 0. And what happens is Nyarlathotep it says, I'm doing 1,000 Forms. And he rolls a 6-sided die. Okay? Once he gets the result, say it's 4, okay, his opponents have a choice. They could either pay him 4 power between them. Sorry, they could either lose 4 power between them. They have to figure out how to divvy up the loss. Or if they refuse to take the loss, Nyarlathotep gets that 4 power and they don't lose anything. So for example, if you have 3 other players and you rolled a 4, they're like, well, you lose 2 and I'll lose 1 and he can lose 1. If they don't agree, then they don't lose the power, but you gain 4 power. So usually, this is kind of a win-win for you as Nyarlathotep, because either they lose a bunch of power, which is cool, or you gain a bunch of power, which is cool. So no matter what, you're happy. And also they have 60 seconds to make their agreement, and usually there's like bickering going on. If you see the Yuggoth map film we did, you can see some of that bickering happening with the 1,000 Forms. Now you can only do 1,000 Forms once during the whole action turn. So after you do it, you flip it face down on the chart, so you can't do it again. It refreshes on the next gather power phase. So one of the things interesting about Nyarlathotep is that although he has ways of getting extra power, his 1,000 Forms ability, which either loses enemies' power or gives him his own, and of course Harbinger, where he can just up steal power, gain power by killing enemy Great Old Ones or injuring them. His ways of gaining power all happen during the course of play. so he's not first player necessarily all the time, but he gets power in the game, so he's often the last guy to be doing things because, his 1,000 forms and his Harbinger gave him power during the course of play, so he often can end up sitting in a pretty good place. 1,000 Forms is one of the very best, one of the very most fun spellbooks in the whole game to do. I recommend it for its entertainment value alone. And that is an introduction to Crawling Chaos. Thank you.